which I know is always the worst thing to do, but one of our speakers is unable to join us this evening, so you're going to have to put up with yours truly at some point. But first up, I'd like to welcome all the new people that are with us. And Deb's over the background there. Hi, Debs. If you don't know, Debs is the lady for Scoobs. She's the face of Scoobs. Yes, she is. Don't say no, yes you are. And if you're launching a book, this is the lady you come to talk to. Her hair changes colour. I've seen pink, purple and blue so far. But it's the same lady underneath it all. So, welcome. I'm not going to babble on much longer. I'm going to ask Gregg to come up and join us. And he's going to be talking to us about audiobooks, which is something that I think is quite new to many of us and quite an interesting subject. Well, I'm looking forward to it anyway. So, Gregg, if you'd like to join us, thank you very much.
Cheers, thanks a lot, Jan. Right, good evening, folks. Thanks for the opportunity here. Of course, Deborah, if you're tuned back in just for a second, I'd like to thank you and the Scoobs owners for making the platform available to us, even on the balcony on a Friday night. It's really nice to be here. Jan, thank you for the invite. To introduce myself to everybody, as you heard, my name's Gregg Davies. So what I do for a living is I'm a voiceover artist. At the same time, I'm an audiobook narrator. But to give you a little bit of perspective, sorry, I'm going to sit down and talk to you because otherwise I'm going to walk and trip over stuff and tend to levitate back to my wine. So there's a whole bunch of new faces here this evening. I see quite a few missing authors, and hopefully quite a few new ones. Regardless, so to give you, I suppose it's only fair if I give you a little bit of background on me so that you understand why I'm here talking about audiobooks. Right, I kind of was born with this weird creative gene. I was given these crayons and the colouring in books and a bunch of books put in the corner, TV was off, and I would entertain myself for years, possibly even decades. As I grew a little older, I grew into the audio industry, so my experience and I hope what qualifies me to have an opinion here, and maybe even some direction for you, is that I've spent for a couple of years and worked in a studio, moved across to Germany because I don't stay in many places too long, and set up a small record label. And when I returned to South Africa in 2001, I started dabbling in video production and trying to find a way to bring the crayons and the audio all into kind of one little corner together. I found a way to make it work. I still play in video every day, but I think we're here to talk about the audio world. We're here to talk about audiobooks. So, you know, I suppose let's get down to the nuts and bolts. Now, okay, for those of you that don't know me, I normally spend my days surrounded by soundproofing. I've got a script to read from, I've got a camera on the table, and as well as here in South Africa, reverts to notes. Yeah, okay. Where does it come from? I think, you know, for me personally, where's my passion for audiobooks come from? It came from my childhood. It came from lying in bed, closing my eyes, listening to mum and dad read a story, and I got to make my own pictures. I got to decide what the characters looked like, to decide what the venues, what the towns, what the colours, what the lighting, time of day or night, and unless the author described it, it was all up to my imagination. And I think that's carried through. So right now, every night of my life, I'm lucky that I get to sit down with my son, lying in bed, get to tell him to close his eyes, tell him a bit of a story, and he gets to jettison off to whatever land it is that he likes to live in. I hope a lot of you are still doing this at home. Okay, don't let the CDs or Audible.com replace us all just yet when it comes to parenting. Mentioning the big one, Audible.com. Do many of you here subscribe, listen to audiobooks? We've got Kim, thank you. We've got Philippa. Anybody else? Okay, I'm not going to pretend to know everybody's names, but so we got here, not quite 10%. Okay. Could anybody even hazard a guess to how many hours of audio was downloaded 2014 alone?
Negative.
I'd like to ask you, you've got such a good smile, and I'm going to look at you all night, mate, because it's like back in the studio. Give us a guess. 2014, how many hours? Not bad, but we're going to have to lift it up a little bit. No, you've had your guess, right? We're going to move on. Next person. Give us a guess. One whole year, one whole planet. How many hours of downloads?
500,000.
500,000 hours. Okay, I'm going to take one more guess, and then we'll actually see. Over here. Give us a guess. We've got 100,000, 500,000. Sounds a bit like an auction, but a million. Okay, 2014, 1 billion hours. 1 billion hours worth of audio downloads. It's quite substantial. Remember, every hour equals cha-ching. Somebody's earning money. Somebody's spending money, somebody's earning. So, you know, we fast forward, we go 2 years later, 2016. Let's get Deborah involved. 2016, we know right now this is an industry that's in major growth. Okay, so 2014, 1 billion hours. 2 years forward, 2016, how many?
7 billion.
7 million. So we
Billion.
went billion. Okay, I shouldn't have asked you. I mean, you're always so optimistic. Let's try this side. Sorry, Deborah. Yeah. Okay, it went through enough growth that in a 2-year period, it doubled.
Wow.
Okay, so again, 2 billion hours. I mean, we got a bit of time to kill here, but 2 billion hours translated into rands, translated into US dollars, currency that people have found the time that they're in their cars, that they're mowing their lawn, they're sitting in a gym, they're painting their house, they're looking after kids, whatever it may be. They've spent that money to carry on reading when they're too busy to read. Yet 4 people here.
This isn't YouTube, is it? This is simply books.
This comes proper stats.
No, this isn't like YouTube's download. This is books.
This is audiobooks.
Audiobooks.
Audiobooks. 1 billion hours. Fast forward, 2 billion hours. We'll get the next report another 6 months, and then we'll know where we stand for 2017. But if we look at what the growth is, what the percentages are year on year, it's going to be frightening. Reverts to notes. Okay. So there's a report that comes out every year, actually, from the Good E-Reader Audiobook Report, it's actually called. And what's that has shown us at the end of 2016 is ebooks have slid by about 12% in the last 12 months, while audiobooks have been on an upward trend of 31% to 35% growth in the last 12 months. Heaven forbid they actually measured 2014 to 2016. So, you know, I guess what I'm trying to ask you is take it seriously. If we look at some of the players out there, from TuneIn Radio, somebody that's got only about 60,000 titles, to your audiobooks.com with 100,000, then we get to the big boy and the big kahuna of audiobooks, audible.com, 325,000 titles. Yeah, which is impressive. I mean, it's all great to have lots and lots of books, but if you look at somebody like audiobooks.com, from 2015 to 2016, they increased their catalogue by 20,000 books. Not a mean feat. More importantly, they increased their subscriber base by 60%. Okay, so it's all great if we're feeding them the books, and we can keep growing that at 20,000 a year. But if they keep growing those subscribers at 60% per year, people want to spend money. They want choice, they want variety, they want to know, I've bought my credits, what are you going to do for me? What are you going to do for me? Little hint, sorry, this is like really selfish, but since Jan invited me to come and talk here, I've been thinking about her and her kids' books, and it's like a little off topic, but Jan, you are going to do this. I know you're going to do audiobooks in time. Just for you personally, remain very aware of the fact that people buy using credits. Credit versus duration is a war that's happening online. So if somebody's got 16 hours worth of audio and you've got a kid's book that is 25 minutes long, you're going to lose that war. When it comes to kids' books, you're going to need to look at bundling your materials together a little, right? Just give me a sec. Okay, so if we deviate from Jan and her personal address and look back at some of our readers' reasons for audiobooks. We've said they can do it when they're on the run, they can do it when they're in the car. We know we all spend a lot more time in our cars these days, the commutes are longer, not in distance, but time. And it just makes sense that if you're a person that likes business books or self-help, or you're indulging yourself in a novel, that you turn your drive time into productive time, as opposed to worrying about what the next taxi is doing and getting on your hooter. Let's be listening, let's be absorbing, let's be growing, and possibly even let's be reinforcing each other just a little bit. You know, if I'm spending my credits online, I'd love to be buying yours and yours and yours and yours, and hoping you're doing the same, as opposed to worrying about our taxi. Outside of this, obviously, we have the fact that if we look at kids from an educational perspective, we all know that we can crawl long before we can walk before we can run. Well, kids quite clearly can hear long before they can read. So if you're not going to do it at bedside at night as a mum and a dad, do it as an audiobook. Let's get kids listening, and let's get them engaged, at least so that when they get to the place where they're ready to read, they're already convinced that books are for them. Let's try and switch the telly off a little bit. I think I'd probably annoy Deborah a little bit and say that, you know, audiobooks are clearly a lot greener than paperbacks, but I believe that they run side by side. Yeah, I've seen, you know, I've got a 16-year-old daughter, and I've seen something happen with her as well with regards to audiobooks and with regards to reading. Is, I have to admit this, and I hope nobody throws anything, is she doesn't really like reading. She'll do it when it's a school project, she'll do it because she has to, but I'm going to find her in her bedroom on her phone long before I find her on a book. So she got a deadline and a little bit of school pressure approaching, and found herself 2 days before a review or exam. What was the book called again? It was what, The Knife of Never Letting Go. And she's openly admitted, and she's watching this week, about music, the boys, the phone, Alex in Spain, whatever it may be. But she goes back 8 pages and she reads again. And then she's forward 10 pages, she tunes out. So what she's essentially doing is she's making this 300-page book into a 3,000-page book. She's got very little retention, and she's getting to the end destination and not getting a great grade. So with this specific one, when she had 2 days left and had a task to accomplish, we got her the audiobook. She did a little bit of a weird deviation on this, is she read at the same time as she was listening. Okay, 2 days later, she'd gotten through it, she went to school, she aced it, 83, 84%. You can correct me later. But as a result, if she needs to read a book, she asks Dad, get me the audiobook, please. It's a lot simpler that way. Alright, so, you know, we've looked at, I suppose, some of the benefits for readers. We've looked at, you know, the great thing that we can read for kids. But for you as authors, I think the paperback does well, then I'm going to invest in the ebook, then I'm going to take the next step. And I think a whole sector of market, you're cutting yourself a little bit short, and it is all because of a fear of what the barrier to entry is, what the barrier to entry being potentially the cost, the sale, the distribution, and an understanding of those channels. So we will look at those tonight, probably a little bit more concisely than the waffling about my kids and storybooks. But I think as a writer, what you need to know is that it's not just an alternate revenue stream or a reinforced a revenue stream that can grow, but it's truly a unique revenue stream. As far as the reports I've been reading and the information that's out there, audiobook listeners are a totally different kettle of fish and a different pool of people to ebook and paperback readers, listeners, yeah, one of the two. So we're missing out a whole niche, a whole extra market segment that can be putting money into your bank on a monthly basis. Not only when ebook sales are down or paperbacks are down and it's a hard month. They've paid for that. They've paid for their subscription on Audible. Give them your product as a choice. Okay? Don't necessarily leave it until later or afterwards. Right now, audiobooks are going through this major growth trend, as we said, 31% in every year. But right now it's a shallow pool. So if we look at audiobooks, we see a bathtub, and if we look at ebooks, we see how to be as poor Dav. Okay? So you're all trying to, you're pushing your marketing, you're persevering. I mean, you're doing all the diligent stuff, but you're competing in a hugely saturated industry. So if you start, and again, I'm a little bit biased, obviously. I mean, I did say what my involvement is in audiobooks. But if you start taking them a little bit more seriously and pushing the agenda and trying to get your material converted to audiobooks, what you stand the chance is maybe audiobooks is going to be something that gets your iceberg moving. If you're struggling to stand out from the crowd on Amazon ebooks, if you're struggling to get front door space at Scoobs, if you can throw yourself in the deep end of the bathtub as opposed to how to be as poet when it comes to audiobooks, and it just remains quite possible and probable that you can promote yourself and be noticed a little bit more in the audiobook space than you can in that saturated space. And what we hope is, if you leap, is it starts to move. So for the authors, one person, anybody this side that I missed? Okay. And you probably, even though you've done it, may aren't, because there's a large pool of people and there's lots of choices out there. Okay. Alright, so your material is just too naughty, that's why you haven't done it. Yeah. Okay. As I said to you, we can talk a little bit later, right? What I found with the people that I've spoken to is there's two main reasons why they haven't done it. Number one is cost is a barrier to entry. Number two, once I've sold my child, invested in my audiobook, considered auctioning my husband, how do I sell and how do I distribute this? You know, because there's the big boys out there of audible.com who fly in tandem with ACX, and a lot of authors locally have run into a roadblock when contacting them. I've contacted them from a narration point of view, and I found the same roadblock, or initially I thought it was a roadblock. It's a speed bump, it's not a roadblock. But what they'll do is, sorry, our market is primarily UK and USA based, so you as an author in South Africa, we just don't have the vehicle or the means or the desire to handle your rights abroad. So thank you, but no thank you. I can see you've been through this. Okay, there's solutions. All right. Okay.